There's a voice deep inside every dad. There's a voice deep inside every dad calling him to lead. Society, vices, inner demons, negative thoughts try to dampen. There's a voice deep inside every dad calling him to lead. Society, vices, inner demons, negative thoughts try to dampen and drown out that voice, but it never goes away. Your wife feels it, your children feel it, and your heart and soul feel it too. It's the voice that starts off as a whisper, but then becomes a calling to be the tip of the spear for your family, a calling to play all out and lead by example for your children, a calling to build a legacy that will go on for generations, a calling to be the warrior dad you were born to be. Dads, our children need us now more than ever to be that beacon of hope, courage, positivity, and strength. It's time to rise as warrior dads together as a brotherhood. If you felt that twinge in your soul, it's time for the Warrior Dad experience. Welcome to the show. I am extremely excited to have special guest Dr. Joe Burns on the show. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey man, Jeff, thanks for having me on here. I'm super excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah, I am pumped as well. Diving into from reaction to control, how dads can keep cool in times of financial stress. What a great subject. So before we go there, give the audience, the dad, some background of kind of what you do from a business perspective, and then we'll pull that thread.
Okay. Again, like Jeff said, I'm Dr. Joe Burns. Really what I do is I focus on helping mostly men look at their emotional relationship with money. So a lot of people come to me and say, hey, Joe, can you help me with like budgets and finance and investing? I'm like, that's not me, right? I really work, and I would call that like the IQ side, right? I focus more on the EQ side, the emotional side. How does money make you feel? And if we change the way you feel about money, can you make more? Does it make life easier? Does it like ease up some of that stress that you feel, that pressure that you feel from, as a provider, as, whatever your role is within your family? Most men feel like they're providers and, attach what they make and their job to their identity. But if we can like ease that out and release some of that pressure, then they go on to make more money and have better lives and all that fun stuff. So in a nutshell, yeah, really just how you feel about money and how you respond to it. And then if we can solve for some of that, then hey, man, life gets a lot better.
Gotcha. And so that might be a foreign concept for dads, right? An emotional relationship with money. So explain that. Let's pull that thread first, because I think that in itself is probably a different concept for a lot of dads listening. What do you define that as and how can we improve, or maybe one or two things that dads can improve to take with them to improve that emotional relationship with money?
Yeah, I mean, really, when you look at it, I like to personify money a bit, right? We always think of it just like as a transaction or just some object that helps us get to wherever we're trying to go, right? But if we can personify it, then we can start to say, hey, how do I feel about this? It's like if you have a friend, right? If a friend comes over, what's that relationship look like with a friend, a family member, something like that? So if we can personify money a little bit more, then we can start to understand, hey, this is how I feel about this object. And we start asking ourselves, why do I feel that way? Right. And a lot of it goes all the way back to like childhood trauma and a lot of that stuff and how we've interacted or how we were taught about it. Lots of different things to uncover there. But that first step is if we can just like say, hey, how do I feel about this thing that I've always just considered as part of my life and probably don't think much about it until I don't have enough, until I want to go do something, until, my family's suffering or might suffer, or, these outside influences hit us and we're like, oh, I don't have the money for that. We never think about, hey, how do I feel about this thing before I ever get to that point? So when I talk about like EQ, the emotional quotient of that is really, again, how do I feel about this resource that I don't think much about?
Okay. And let's just take a dad that maybe is struggling financially, and that example of, hey, an expense comes up maybe and they don't have the funds for it, and he immediately feels bad about himself. Like what's that scenario, and how would that dad work through that challenge?
Yeah, and I can see that a lot of men, right? Because again, like I said earlier, a lot of men identify how much they make and what they do with their identity.
Right.
Which then, if you don't have enough, then what happens to your identity, right? You take that hit personally, and it doesn't start to feel good. So if you run into a situation like that, obviously there's no magic, wand to say, hey, here's some money, or someone's not going to come drop a dump load, dump truck load of money in your driveway. But what you can do is what's happening is when you start to feel that pinch, a lot of times what happens is we panic, right? That lizard brain part of us kicks in, and it's like, fight, flight, freeze. And there was a fourth one, I forget, but whatever, right? But that lizard brain kicks in, and then we do something. And a lot of people just freeze because they don't know what to do, right?
Hmm.
They're like, "Oh, I'm in a pinch. I don't have any clue what to do." So they sit there and they stew on it. And and men, again, when we look at what society has told us we need to do, right? We'll be like, okay, we start scrambling to go find a solution.
Right.
When I'm going to suggest that's probably the worst thing we can do,
Okay.
right? Because we're acting at that point on emotions. I don't have enough. I'm not enough. And so I'm going to go try to do something that may or may not bring back results. And usually they don't bring back results because we're not doing the tasks that are going to help us bring back results, which is the results is going to be money, right? In this case, so if we can stop and just pause for a moment and say, hey, okay, who can help me with this? Right,
Hmm.
that's my favorite question in the world. Who can help me? Because we already know the what, right? And what is like an energy burner. It's like if you look at like a scale of energy used for questions, what is really bad? It's pretty far down on we know what to do, right?
Right.
Now,
Hmm.
what to do should be go ask somebody for help, right? But again, us men, we have egos. It's hard to go ask people for help a lot of times and
Yep.
be like, hey, I'm struggling. I need some help. And, that help doesn't always have to be just like, asking your parents or asking colleagues or friends or family what for money if you're in a pinch. It could be like, hey, I need to storm some ideas.
Mm.
What can I do to like solve for this? Right. Or maybe, if you're in a job and you're not making enough, maybe you can, say, hey, who can help me maybe find a better paying job,
Right.
right? Who can help me learn some skills or look at what I do to, currently and what skills do I need or the gap. So there's lots of different ways we can go with this. But a lot of times, like I said, a lot of people don't say, hey, who can help me? Because we
Mm.
have lots of people in our lives who can help us. A lot of times that ego or that pride thing just kicks in and is like, oh, I can't ask for help because then what are they going to think about me?
Right.
Right. We put ourselves on these pedestals sometimes that especially for our families, that we can't be knocked off of, right? Because they look up to us, and there's all these things, and so it becomes kind of this brain trap of emotions that doesn't help us get to really where we want to go, and it doesn't solve our solutions either, right? And that becomes a real problem, and then it starts to compound, and then the problem becomes bigger.
Yeah. No. A couple of things there. One is I was just having this conversation with my dad yesterday. I said, "There's no self-made man. He's always had help." I mean, you can see somebody that says, "Yeah, I'm a self-made man." There
Nope.
is a team that it's just not the case. So
Yep.
stop with the I need to do it all by myself. And I used to suffer from that and thought, hey, yes, I need to take it. Nope. Everybody's got a team. That's number one. And then the other piece, when you were talking about, hey, when you had that fear, flight, reptilian brain kick in and you just react and you do the what, it might potentially solve a short-term problem, but long-term, it's not going to help. So I wrote down spark creativity, like take a pause, take a moment, and think of who and how do you get creative to make it a long-term solution rather than a short-term band-aid on something that you're going to probably have to go back to again and again as other things come up. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah. And that's one thing that people don't often look at because they're laser focused on the exact solution, which is again a lot of times money. And I'm
Hmm.
like, but money's not always the solution, right? Money is generally a part of the solution, but there's other things, right? I have a framework I use with all my clients. It's called MERIT,
Okay.
MERIT. And it stands for money, energy, relationships, ideas, and time. And when I look at money and when I look at resources in our lives, I look at all five of those holistically because we have all those in our lives. A lot of times, like I say, we laser focus on money because that's the thing that's like, oh, that's what we've been programmed to say, this will fix our problem.
Right.
But more money won't always fix our problem. Right. And that's key that a lot of people don't understand. You could go get a different job making more money, but are you going to be happy?
Hmm. Or is it
I
gonna,
mean,
or
when
is
I
it
was
gonna suck the energy out of you,
right,
right? And
or are
that's
you
gonna,
gonna have make more money but have less time now, right? So you can't
right.
spend with your kids and your family,
Hmm.
right? And I've had jobs like that where I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a killer job. I make more money. I got a raise, but then the work environment was horrible. I hated it. I came home angry every night, and I'm like, this is not worth the trade off. You know what I mean? So money doesn't
Gotcha.
always fix the problems. We want to
Right.
look at it all holistically because, you know, all these resources pulled together can really create a lot of momentum and success for us.
So is it, hey, with the clients you work with, take a pause and focus on the merit in those 5 areas and really evaluate kind of where they're at and go through that process?
Yeah, 100%. I always look at all 5 all the time. Again, we always set like money goals because I like setting money goals because it's the most emotionally charged, right?
Hmm.
Because you can see it. It's also the quickest to see change in, right? You can look at your bank account and say, "Hey, do I have more now or less than I when I started?"
Yep.
So it's a really cool like litmus test to say, "Hey, are these things working?" But I always look at all of them because we're holistic beings, right? And a lot of times in our brains we've compartmentalized each of those, right? They're all different.
Hmm.
But really, if we can take a step back and look at them all together, then it becomes a lot more helpful in trying to get to where we're trying to go.
Yeah, I would think also money and kind of the time factor would be pretty easy to quantify, right? You can see a number where you came from, time, hey, you've got it. The other 3 might be a little bit more challenging because it's energy. You know, you need to see where you're at there and where you're at in the future relationships, obviously, from that perspective. But I love that pause. So let's go back to a dad that might have a limiting belief around money. Maybe he learned it in childhood, and that money is a scarce resource, got a scarcity mindset. What does a dad, what's the first step a dad would take, or 1 or 2 quick and easy? Not that anything's quick and easy, but to start the process. I think that's part of the challenge is people think it should be quick and easy. Like what do they do to unpack and one have an awareness of that scarcity mindset and start to change the tide?
Yeah, I think the quickest thing is my age old tool that I love. Right, is just get some cash and talk to it.
Okay.
And people are like, "That's really weird, Joe." And I'm like, "I know it's weird, and it unlocks so much in us, right? So just get a little bit. It doesn't matter. It could be $1 bill. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could be change in your like from your car or something, right? But take like 5 minutes a day and do this for a couple weeks, and just sit down and be like, "Hey, money, how's it going?" Like again, like I said at the beginning, right? If we treat money as like a real person, right? As like we're in a relationship with it, ask it that kind of questions, get to know it, right? And obviously you can talk out loud if you want. Your family might think you're a little crazy, but that's okay. But then have a pad of paper and a pen, right, with you there, and just jot down like what comes up for you. What thoughts are coming for you? Are you scared that you don't have enough? You know, the emotions coming up because that's step number one. Really, is understanding which emotions are coming up when we're really focused on money. Right, day to day life is so busy that the bills come in and we're just like paying them, and or if we can't whatever that stress is, we don't take a lot of time to like actually sit down and journal. Like, hey, why do I feel this way?
Gotcha.
Right, because awareness is number one. If we're not aware of what's going on, then it's going to be impossible, right, to get anything done. So if we can be aware of what the emotions are, like I said, just a little bit of cash, something, it again feels really weird, but it's a fun exercise to go through because it really makes us stop and think, hey, how do I really feel about this stuff? And
Got
then, just do that for a couple weeks and see what comes up, right? Because then once you're aware of the emotions and how you're starting to feel, then you can start asking yourself, okay, why do I feel this way
okay.
when I think about money? Why do I feel this way when a bill comes in, right? Do you have like that, like if a bill comes in, expected or unexpected, do you feel like a gut punch, like, oh, or a cringe, or like you
Mm,
can start then tapping into how does your body respond to it?
right.
Because then that's, and with that information, then you can start asking yourself, why does that happen? And you can do more journaling exercises. You could just like do, ponder and think about it, to say, hey, why does this? And a lot of times when we start doing that, then events from the past will start showing up and be like, oh, that one time, like this thing happened and it was associated with money, right? We start to make these correlations within our brain because our brain knows, we know, but
Mhm.
our body's just trying to protect us from these traumatic events that happened.
Gotcha. No, I love the awareness is number one. I mean, that's the first step in any type of change. You got to have an awareness, whether it's back when I used to own a gym and somebody come in and said, like to eat healthier. I said, okay, you got to track your food. And all of a sudden they start tracking their food, journaling it. And they're like, oh my God, I eat like crap. Right. Like, and
It's true.
until then they thought they were fine eating. But then once you put it down it's like, oh my goodness, what am I eating? Or some of the dads go through the experience. We track our time for 3 days, and they look at the time they spend watching TV or on social, and they're like, I just waste too much of my time. Right. So
Yeah.
it's if you don't have an awareness, you can't make any change. So, the title of this episode, From Reaction to Control, how dads can keep cool in times of financial stress. So, let's pull that thread, reaction to control. How can they switch from, hey, being stressed about money and taking back control so it doesn't kind of trickle out or impact their relationship with their kids and their wives?
Yeah, this has been a fun one, as I developed kind of this thought process around it. Right, I always knew it was happening. I got the words for it when I moved to Las Vegas. There's a program here that I'm a part of called Deep End Fitness.
Okay.
And for any guys out there, if there's a Deep End Fitness chapter in where you live, go experience it, because it's basically the program was created by a bunch of ex-military guys, and it's basically underwater CrossFit. Is the best way I
Okay.
can describe it. Right.
Wow. Nice.
There's a lot of breath work. You're in the deep end of the pool. You're going down, and you have to do breath holds and stuff. And when I first started, I couldn't hold my breath for like 15 seconds.
Yep.
Right after I got really sick, my lungs got hammered by COVID, all that fun stuff. My record now is like 3.5 minutes.
Wow.
But what it got me is the pool is an interesting place to work out, because you can't cheat your workout. You either go under the water and you do your workout, or you don't, right? Because you can't take a breath. Like, you have to hold your breath for the entire time. And so it started to get my brain thinking about this chaotic emotion that we feel,
Okay.
right? And we feel chaotic emotion a lot in life. The problem is we just pass it off. Again, like when we see money, what do we feel? We feel these emotions hitting us, and a lot of times they're chaotic. So what happens is it forces us to take some kind of action.
Okay.
Right? That lizard brain kicks in, and we're like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I don't like it. So we'll do whatever we can. The controlled response is understanding what it is that's happening to you, and then knowing what steps to take next. Right. So back to the pool example, right? One exercise I remember at one point, like, we do bobs where you just like go to the bottom of the pool, hold your breath, and then come back up and just kind of bob in the water. And it's nice. It can be nice and relaxing. And then our instructor like upped it one week. He's like, okay, we're going to tie your hands and your feet together, and then you got to do it. Right. So there's no training water. You just got to go up and down. Right. And it's not that far to the bottom of a 13-foot pool. But again, the brain is saying, I can't move freely, so I'm going to freak out.
Right.
Right. So again, can you relax yourself enough when the event is happening that you don't panic and take some action you don't want to take? Right. The control response, it doesn't mean the emotions won't be there. The emotions will be there. And as you process them and as you get stronger, it's like working a muscle. They'll come up and you'll get stronger, and you'll be able to, understand it, and your tolerance becomes better.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if we can become more calm during the process, then we'll find solutions quicker to what it is that we need to do. And that's really that controlled response, right? We can't control all of our responses, but we can start to understand what it's doing to us. And like in the pool, we can then become calm, because in the pool, the calmer you are, the less oxygen you burn, and the longer you can hold your breath. Right. And that's how I went from holding it from 15 seconds at a time to 3.5 minutes at a time. And it's crazy, right? I didn't think I'd ever be able to do it. But again, the concept is so clear in my mind, right? That as we hit these turbulent times in life, again, like I said earlier, one key thing too is when you start to feel those, just take like 10 seconds and pause and breathe. Right? It will help calm your body down in a way that then you can start really seeing, hey, do I have a solution? Again, back to who can help me, right? We can start reaching out, but we're not going to be like in that survival mode and just like panicked to try to figure things out. Because trust me, the very first time I had my hands tied behind my back and had to go in the water, I thought I was like, well, I'm going to get this. Man, I went down and up twice, and I was like, I swam to the side. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Right. And then I went back, and, I almost quit. And there's nobody say that. I mean, it's, it's one of those, like, I'm just on my own out there. I mean, there's instructors, but it's not like he's going to be after me like, oh, why are you not finishing? He's like, oh, cool. Cool. You did it. You didn't like it. Maybe next time. It's personal accountability out there. But I calmed myself, and I got to the place where I'm like, I'm safe. I'm okay. And this is a cool experience eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just picturing myself with my feet tied and my hands tied behind my, yeah. I love the calm response. Taking a breath. I think that is so underrated. Dads listening, I think you've probably heard me mention it before. Like, I take a breath in conversations with my kiddos or my wife if it's kind of getting heated, and just choose my response. And many times my wife will be like, "Why aren't you responding?" And I'm like, "Because I'm actually choosing the correct response rather than the reaction and the emotion that probably isn't going to be the best response." And over time, you build up that muscle to choose your response and take a breath. And you talked about getting in the pool and working out. I did something similar, breathing through my nose, walking, and then practicing breathing through my nose, jogging. And the first time I did it, like I got 10 steps and all of a sudden I needed to breathe, where it was all in the mind. I just needed to
Yeah.
calm myself down, say, "Hey, I'm getting plenty of oxygen. Now I can run 3, 4, 5 miles with just nose breathing the entire time." But it took effort, and it took calming the mind down in the moment rather than just letting whatever flow through. And really that caveman brain, that reptilian brain, just reacting and fighting or fleeing and causing all kinds of stress in the process.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. Like, and like the breathing has made so much a difference. Like you're saying, Jeff,
Mm-hmm.
it makes such a difference. And I think the one thing people also with a lot of personal development stuff, they're like, "Hey, I got this one down, and this one thing I had a problem with is really good now. Why did I react over here?" Well, because that's a new experience, right? It's new triggers. So
Mm-hmm.
as you go through this, right, know that like you're going to master some things, and some things are still going to like hit you, and you got to still keep working on it
Yep.
because we're complex organisms as human beings, right? There's lots of different triggers. We have lots of different things that will come up for us. And that's why the tools are so important, right? That consistency in doing the tools and using the tools and being like, "Hey, this is a tool I was given. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how it applies right here." That's okay. Just do it. And then you can figure out how it applies. Because sometimes we don't understand, right? But I hit that all the time. I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing so good in this one area." And then I'll have like a different conversation with my wife and get differently triggered. And I'm like, "Oh man, like, why are we like," sometimes it feels like, why are we back here again where we were like 4 years ago? But again, it's the new layers. It's just different, and if we can give ourselves that forgiveness and grace
Mm-hmm.
as we go through the process, right? Because it's going to be I don't know. I don't think I'll ever get through it myself. Like it's going to be the rest of my life process, and just understand that and be like, cool, celebrate your wins along the way. Man, you're going to be in such a different place.
Yeah. No, when you were talking about that, I mean, it's funny. I said never finished product. I wrote down, like, we're never a finished product. And I think that's a myth and such a false reality that some dads might have, is like, "Hey, I'm going to get to a point and then I don't need to do the work. I'm a finished." No, that's never going to happen. You're never a finished product. And then it's also, the breath is a tool to prepare for when things send you sideways. And if it's, we're talking money, financial stress, right? And reacting, that's a tool that you can add to your toolkit today. And when you feel
Mhm.
it, just take a breath. Like, it is something. So we overcomplicate the heck out of life. And I had a
Mhm.
dad who was actually in class one of the Warrior Dad experience. And I taught him, "Hey, just breathe and come back to center." And he literally did it. And the week later, he said, "You know what? I kind of thought you were crazy." And I said, what is he talking about? Breathe. and he breathed through his nose. And he said, "Jeff, it was amazing. I got calm and I got centered, and I was good." And I said, "Listen, I'm it's the simple, easy things that we so often miss that can help us in that moment. And from switching from reaction to control when those financial stressors really hit us." So yeah, so true.
Yeah, 100%. Like it makes such a difference, like you're saying. And I think that's the thing a lot of times is the more simple the solution, sometimes we just kind of disregard it. We're like, that's too simple. Like, is it really going to work? But I'm like, really? I mean, this stuff's not easy, but it is pretty simple.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
just
I,
set up
I
a
think
routine and follow that.
I think that's the point, right? I think people see it and say, "No way that could work. That is way too easy. You got to be kidding me. I breathe all day long." Well, you're probably not doing it intentionally to center yourself, and it's just so automatic. You're not even thinking about it. Get into that spot, do it, and it's a game changer. So it is so important to do that. So what else? What's one or two other nuggets for dads that might be in that financial stress season of their lives? What are other things that they can do to kind of remain in control in their lives?
I think one other thing that's going to help is know where your money's going.
Okay.
I don't generally have my clients unless they're in a real bad place do a budget. There's lots of people who have like fancy budgets. I have a very simple one. Know what's going out, know what's coming in. But that's also another tool I give people. If they're not doing it, and then say, again, back to the emotional side, how do you feel when you're doing your budget? Because a lot of people don't like doing budgets because they don't want to see, back to like you were talking earlier about tracking your food or stuff like that.
Yep.
If we track the money, we can understand where stuff's going. And if you do that, I want you to drop the shame and judgment because you're going to feel it. Like, oh, we spent money here, we spent money there, whatever. It doesn't matter. That's what happened. It's just what is. So then you can make informed decisions going forward, right? Yeah. And then the last one would be understand how you feel going into a financial conversation with your wife before
Okay.
you have it. Like there's a lot of,
Mhm.
you look at, they always say finances are one of the highest reasons for divorce rate, right? And I understand people just are different pages about money. Understand yourself first before you have those really hard conversations with your wife, and
Mhm.
understand that she's having her own response when she has that conversation with you,
Right.
right? I think if we can just put some perspective around that, then we're going to have a better conversation, even if it still ends up the way it has before. But if we can just start understanding, hey, what's the perspective we're coming here? What's the perspective they're coming here with, right? Then
Mhm.
we'll start to we can start working on that, because that's not an easy one, right? Because you're working on yourself, and then your spouse has a different set of beliefs and understandings that you might understand, you probably don't understand.
Mhm.
They're bringing their own stuff. So if we can get to that place, we're going to have better household conversations around finances and money as well, which helps in the end.
Yeah. So true. And I love the know where your money's going. My wife and I started doing that a couple years ago, tracking on a spreadsheet, not necessarily budgeting, but what's coming in, what's going out.
Yeah.
And it, I will tell you, it connected us more because I always took care of the books and she had no visibility into it. Sometimes I get frustrated on what's being spent. She wouldn't see when we could both see it on the same page. Hey, there was no questions. There was no, hey, what's going on? Here's what's coming in. What's going out. So highly recommend that to the dads listening. So dad listening wants to look you up, connect with you, Joe. Where would they connect with you?
My website, which is on the thing, josephmburns.com, is always the best place. Any new offers, whatever I have, are always on the page. Right now, I'm running a one-on-one 6-month program called The End Goal,
Okay.
which is really what do you want to accomplish in life? And then how does your money, your energy, your relationships, your ideas, and time support that? And then just digging in to say, hey, what's stopping you from actually doing that? I think that was the place I was at a long time ago when I
Mhm.
saw the corporate world. I got frustrated because I'm like, I'm not contributing to like the impact I really want to make.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of men out there in the same boat, right? There's impact. There's things they really want to do that's outside of their corporate job.
Right.
They're just not sure like what that means, right? Because again, you have obligations, you have these feelings about money, you have all this stuff, right, that you've chosen into over the years. Um, and there's probably other things you want to do. So really focus on that, and helping change the mindset around those areas so that, you can really accomplish and have the impact you want. It doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur or anything like that, but there's different ways to make impact. And I think most times we feel resource constraint. We just don't realize it.
Yep. Got it. Awesome. Joe, thanks so much for being on the show.
Jeff, it was amazing. Like, thanks for having me on here, man.
Yeah, you are so welcome. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you watching. Dare to be uncommon. Love, lead, legacy. Create a legendary day. And I'll talk to you soon.